So tell me about Chicago water treaters, how you got into that, how you got into water treatment, because I'm always curious about how people get into, let's say, HVAC industry. Water treatment is kind of part of HVAC. You're on the HVAC side of it. There's other parts of water treatment. I don't know if you do wastewater. We can get into that, but I would say the big HVAC industry. How do you get into water treatment, which is a niche, and why are you excited about water treatment?
Yeah, so it is definitely a niche industry, right? And most of the time when I chat with my friends about it, or I tell them that I'm in water treatment, they immediately think, oh, well, my drinking water here, right? So I've got lead in my water, or what do I do with hard water? What does that even mean? And what does a water softener do? And what does regeneration mean? So all of that is great and it's good conversation, but it's only a little bit of very little of what we do, right? So how did I get into water treatment? So it goes actually back to my dad was in water treatment for all of my childhood growing up. So he worked for originally one of the big box companies. It was Dearborn Chemical, which was, I think, part of GE Betts. Some of that's don't completely quote me on that. But then he worked for some smaller, more local companies, and then just decided to venture out on his own. So he had his own company for probably about 30 years before selling that, retiring, getting out of it. I never had the thought to really go into water treatment necessarily. I had certainly dabbled into it with some of my previous operational and manufacturing experience, which I can get into at some point here. But essentially, water treatment was always I was always exposed to it. So all throughout my childhood, been in water treatment for the most part, went out and rode with my dad a number of times. But then about a few years ago, my brother happened to start up his own company, and I got this real bug to join him in this. And that's just how it kind of started and kicked off, and how I'm at it with him right now.
Did you go to college
I did. So I
for
went to University of
chemical
Illinois.
engineering?
Yep, chemical engineering, University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. Little shout out to the Illini right now, ranked number 9 in the latest AP poll.
So chemical engineering, I mean, I'm vaguely familiar with the college end of it, and basically that it's a very vast industry, and probably one of the hardest decisions of chemical engineering is trying to figure out where you want to go. Like, so when you were in college, where you're like, water treatment, or were you trying to branch out and then just kind of got back into water treatment?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I never had really the thought of going directly into water treatment. Even if I were to come back around to it, I don't think I would have gone and worked directly for my dad or family company afterwards. I think it was, even from the start, I thought it was critical to get some success somewhere else. I had interned for a number of years for a medical device company that was local to me. A lot of it was in plastics. So as I just continued to get my degree and go through that, in the back of my mind, it was pretty much decided that I was going to go work for this company once I got out of college, if offered from them, which I was.
Got it. So I guess, how's your brother feel about you being on a podcast as when you're working for his company that he started?
Right. So we are partners in this. So we are equal partners. So I like to say sometimes when he's talking about it, and he says, "Well, I got this that I can offer," or something like that. I'm like, "We goose, we here, right?" So he's more charismatic, I feel, than I am, and definitely more outgoing. So I think he's uber jealous right now.
Partners in business is a huge thing. So what does he bring to the table that you don't, and what do you bring to the table? Because it's very important in business to have partners that don't bring the same thing to the table and kind of work with each other instead of having the same strengths.
Right. So one of the one of the concerns that a lot of our friends had, or those that we know, is, oh, do you really want to get into business with family? And it's the same. You have to treat it like you're getting into business with any other business partner. Do you align in business priorities first and foremost? And of the things that may be, let's say, annoying, or things that might are small things, are they really an issue, right? And can he get past them? And him being my brother, and vice versa, I think there's a lot of leeway that goes along with the silly little things. So aligning on business, right? So we sat down and we came up with a business plan before we even did this. Before I even joined him, we had probably about an 8-month ramp up period where I just worked pro bono and rode along with him, and then started to go out and do calls with clients, as well as some cold calling and generating some clients on my own. And we really just tried it out for roughly around 8 months before we really said, okay, yeah, this is definitely working out, and we want to continue with this. But that original business alignment as to how do we even want profit sharing to go? How do we want the money to work? How do we want to have what do we want our brand to be? And just really sitting down, putting that to paper and going over that. We even got into, if we get large enough, what do we want to do with new employees, and how do we want that pay to be? So there was a lot of brand imaging and company planning that we've already been through to align on this before coming into it, and not just getting into this because we're both brothers. So the question was, what do we both bring to the table, right? So Brian, my brother, brings with him 15 plus years of direct experience in the water treatment industry. So he's worked as anything from a sales technician all the way up to the technical director for a number of companies. So when he started this, he's definitely that SME, a subject matter expert within the water treatment world, and there's certainly not much that he hasn't seen that he can't comment on, or make some really good programs and problem solving to get to. So then, what do I bring to the table, right? If I can't bring that necessarily SME, so it's not like I don't know about water treatment, right? It's been there my whole life. I'm an engineer. I've dealt with it and things along those lines. But I bring a vast industrial and just mechanical mindset to the table here, as well as, I'll say, a lot of infrastructure and I don't want to say corporate backing to it, but just some process-oriented thought to the table. So, just for instance, my brother had come up with a little bit of infrastructure when it comes to, here's how I write reports, and here's what I'm doing right now for logging customer or for logging my service visits. So I was able to take that and put a lot of structure behind it in terms of, all right, let's get a little bit more consistent with this, and let's also have a little bit more of a system to automate our work here. So I'm just able to use Excel and do some basic things along those lines with programming to make our system a little bit more streamlined. But the other side of it is, I do consider my brother more charismatic than I am. And so he's really good at coming out and like in the sales table, let's say, right? And I was just comparing it with him over this weekend to starting and closing pitching. And so he's really good at being that starting pitcher. And then as soon as we start to establish some rapport, things along, something along those lines, I like to consider myself the closer in those situations, and I can continue to talk before he's potentially said, "Okay, I'm kind of out of it right now." So I think we pair up really well like that.
I mean, it sounds like you put a lot of thought into it, and that's important. I think a lot of people have survivorship bias of starting a company, especially with 2025. Everybody on social media is driving Bentleys, making millions, posting content or whatever, and you don't see all the thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of companies that went out of business within year one. But small business administration or whoever. It's some statistic. I'm not going to quote a guess, but it's some high number, like 40% of businesses don't make it past year one, and then something like 50% don't make it past year three. And it the hardest part about business is not signing up, getting your legal name and all that stuff. And it's actually delivering a product that customers want to pay for. And even if your product is better, you have to change your customers' processes and decision making. It takes action for them to choose you. So I guess let's back up. So water treatment. What do you cover for water treatment? I know this is a boiler focused podcast, but we're all about the HVAC and water treatment. Let's get into exactly your scope of work.
So any heating or cooling process with water. So that is certainly HVAC. So whether it's chilled water, through mechanical chillers that are going through open tower loops for condenser water, or air cooled chillers, we deal with plenty of those, or glycol loops. All of that water needs to be treated. There's also the industrial side of this. So many industrial processes, such as a plastics facility, a food processing facility, tons of others as well. They're going to be using hot water, steam, or chilled water for their process. So whether that's to chill equipment or cool equipment, such as hydraulic machinery, or injection molds commonly need to be chilled or heated, for that matter, with water. So there's a number of different metals that this water is going through, and it certainly leads to different types of efficiencies if the water is not treated. So scope of work is coming up with the treatment plan for that particular water loop, whether it's open or closed, as well as coming up with potential equipment that would be required, and making those recommendations and quotations to the customer to add that equipment if they desire.
Got it. So I guess how much of your business is comfort and how much is process?
So at this point, we're probably about 60% comfort and 40% process. I imagine over time it'll probably go more towards 50-50. I don't have any data point to say this is why it's doing that. That's just the way that I think it's going. Our largest customer is process, actually, at this point, though. So food processing, and they have a couple of steam boilers, as well as a number of condensing towers for their ammonia refrigeration system.
What's the manufacturing look like in the Chicagoland area? Is it strong? Is it growing? Or do you see factories announcing layoffs, closing down?
I haven't seen factories that have necessarily closed down in the area, or that have announced layoffs in this time. So we do factories both within the Chicago in Chicago and in the surrounding Collar counties, as well as we do go up just across the border in Wisconsin into Kenosha. And manufacturing there's still plenty of plants up there. I've seen expansions occur at this point, whether depending on the industry. So I haven't necessarily seen, to answer your question, a downgrade in manufacturing right now.
Well, that's always good. So Chicago is, other than New York City, as America grew, started off New York City, came across Cleveland. I'm from Cleveland. Cleveland used to be a much bigger city. It's a lot of manufacturing has left, but then Chicago grew because of the Great Lakes and the connection to the Mississippi, and it just kept growing and growing and growing. And all of a sudden in 2025, we are booming with skyscrapers and all those downtown buildings. So I guess, are you are you downtown working and in all those buildings going to, I guess, do they put cooling towers on the top of those buildings?
They sure do. So most of the buildings within, we'll call it the loop over here, right? Most of the buildings within the loop have cooling towers as well as a steam boiler somewhere in them as well. And as you look up the skyscrapers, yeah, you'll on some of them you will see towers up top. Sitting right on top of them, but in others, you'll typically see a level that's either a third of the way up, two-thirds of the way up, that doesn't have any windows on it, that has slats on it, and that's the mechanical floor. So a lot of times the chillers and towers are located within that area there.
Got it. So before I get to the boiler side, I got some boiler questions, but I wanna talk about uh, a Legionella, I believe, is the Legionnaire's disease, and I saw something. I believe it was in New York City, but it is it's been in the news recently, and I don't think people are aware of how important it is, especially not the general public, until it's already too late. So I guess, can you do just a quick overview of what it is and why it's so important to stay on top of your maintenance for your chilled water system?
Sure. So, especially open evaporative systems is where this comes from because Legionella is what grows in these open systems if not treated properly with biocide. So it's an airborne illness. You don't get it by drinking. Well, you don't really get it by drinking water, right? So it is a pneumonia that contracts within the body. And most individuals will not contract it. So it's very if there's something going on with your immune system and you are susceptible to it, it will have a greater effect on you. So a lot of us are exposed to it and don't even see the effects of it. So where can it grow, right? So any open loop water. So I was even in one of the articles that you're mentioning, or one of the articles about the situation you're mentioning. The article opened up with a picture of a heat pump, and I'm like, all right, well, that's a heat pump isn't really going to generate that much of it. But at the same time, if it is condensing in a pan that's under a heat pump, sure, there's a very remote chance that will develop something that will carry with the air and blow it somewhere. But now we're talking about with with the cooling tower, it's got a fan on top. It's blowing. It's really creating a draft of air and spreading whatever's in that across a pretty large area. So you happen to walk across an area that's downwind with that blowing on you. Sure, you can certainly get a dose of it. So really, the important part is the tower needs to be treated with biocide, and it needs to be just treated properly. And it's not very hard to do so, but it certainly is responsible for an owner of an open tower system to do so.
It's one of those things though that, water treatment, it's almost invisible. While you may have somebody showing up and they're adding chemicals, like if you miss a month, it's not like your building doesn't heat or cool. So a lot of building owners, on the heating side, you may see this, try to skimp out on water treatment and maybe try to do it themselves. And if they have building engineers and inside employees that don't understand what's going on and they have other tasks to do, that always all the red alarms and bells come first before a passive system, until it's probably too late. And then you end up on the news and you have bacteria and growing in your water. And I know a person that has a story, and it's not always just loop systems. He was demoing, not this person, but he knew somebody that was demoing a factory that had been vacant for a while, and he cut open a water line, and the water, it was like above his head or something. It got on him or something, contracted Legionella and died. all from just demoing a abandoned water line. So it's something to take seriously. And, you know, any on the process side, there's like line break permits
Mhm.
and all that stuff. And that's always very important. I think a lot of HVAC people, they just think, oh, it's just water. Oh, it's just this and that. And, there's no harsh chemicals. Well, you got to be aware of what you're doing, how often or when's the last time, maybe that system ran, maybe a building shut down 10 years ago and now you're demoing out equipment or you're demoing out loops that have been turned off. Are they full of water? Like, you need to be aware of that. Wear respirators, take proper safety precautions, get it tested. And don't just assume, oh, it's water. Water is water. No, like, if it's not properly treated, water, as you said, will grow bacteria and will get all weird, and that can come with diseases that can kill you.
Yeah, exactly. And if we're talking about a tower water treatment, there is definitely an approved way to treat it for Legionella avoidance, right? And it's with dosage of oxidizing and non-oxidizing biocides. So that's how we keep the towers clean. And uh, you focus on the process side of it. You could probably instead of necessarily the testing. So if you've got a good process up front, the tests usually turn out quite well when you do so. But having water sit around is usually never a good thing whatsoever, no matter what it's sitting around in. To your point there.
Yeah, absolutely. So going over to boilers. So does Chicago
Yeah.
have it? Does Chicago have a central steam plant?
So they do have district heating, but a lot of buildings have their own boilers in them. So we service a number of buildings that still have old Kiwani boilers in the basement. Of course, they've been insulated and have had burner upgrades and things like that over the years, right? But there's some pretty large ones down there that we still treat, and they still do really well.
A lot of those boilers, it's probably almost impossible to get them changed out.
I
Is
can't
that,
imagine what it would take
yeah,
on some of them. Yeah.
like essentially the boilers were put in the base. I mean, those boilers were put in the basement when Chicago was not even a tenth of what it is now. And, you're tearing out the whole sidewalk and shutting down streets. And hey, the boiler replacement's, 500 grand, but to get a boiler in and out is going to be $1 million. And then building owners are like, oh, well, what can we do? And that that essentially makes it viable now to keep refitting an old boiler. And
And even a lot of times they've been insulated in asbestos, so that asbestos remediation starts to become upwards of many hundreds of thousands of dollars.
so what, do you have a old boiler that pops up to mind? Do you remember, maybe the oldest steam system boiler that you've seen?
So there's definitely a few of them that come to mind, and two places that are definitely old buildings within the loop, and both of them have Kiwani pretty large fire tube boilers. And one particular one that doesn't have, so one other site that doesn't have a boiler down there anymore that I can recall, but or that we treat. So it's a building with all electric heat right now. But down in the basement, they've actually closed off a number of passages that used to be down there. But there's still one portion of the basement that has a small rail line in it for when they used to transport coal down into the basement, down to the boilers. So a lot of the buildings were connected in that way in order to transport coal around to put into the fireboxes, which is really cool to see down there.
Yeah, that's when I was doing back in my service days, seeing old boilers or seeing old, especially stuff that's connected to coal. People think coal, black skies and all this stuff, but, if you have to heat the entire city of Chicago with coal, and I don't know when, probably up through the 50s and 60s, they started turning over. But that's a lot of mass that you have to transport, and it's dirty. And how do you do that efficiently and then move it efficiently? And so you build this whole infrastructure around it. Well, you know, when you get away from it, the infrastructure is still there, and then, it kind of gets abandoned, but it's so cool to see. For me, I love old buildings and history, and, even if the boiler's not running, I've been in a building, the boilers are actually running, but the whole boiler was like a wall. They're all built into place with brick, but it's like an entire solid wall. And I think the boiler was from like 1910. But it was converted to natural gas, but in a building where it's just never feasible to change it out. Are most of these buildings low pressure steam?
Yeah, for sure. And, under 15 PSI usually, right? So nothing big, but they run hard for probably usually maybe 2 months out of the year, right? And then it's pretty mild. So you just get, varying load on them, which makes water treatment actually kind of difficult because of that load. And one day, especially when we're at the shoulder seasons, it does get difficult to keep the connectivity and the chemistry and everything in balance for what you want to see in there, because you have to adjust your blowdown time. How much am I blowing down based on the load? And none of these have automatic blowdown on them for comfort cooling or for comfort heating. Sorry. So just based on the operator. Yeah, here's what I'm gonna blow down today, and we'll just adjust from there typically.
Yeah, there's a lot of feeling to it. I guess at a certain point you could do math calculations and do the science, but when so steady state operation is the best for water treatment. It's the best for boiler life, for anything. And when it starts, as you said, get into the shoulder months, fall and spring, where, the day starts at 50 degrees, but it may warm up to 70. So you only need heat in the morning, and then the boiler shuts down, and then it doesn't turn on until, at night again. And that makes water treatment extremely difficult, especially when you have not enough water stores. So you're bringing in a ton of fresh water. The boiler heats up, fills the whole system with steam, and then shuts down. And then all that water, all that steam condenses into condensate, comes back, overflows the receiver, and goes to drain. And then now you're trying to play catch up of, hey, I had all this fresh water, we treated it, now it all went to drain. And I guess, is it just trying to over treat? What would you do, or, recommend others do when in the shoulder months to try to, one, get their boiler started at startup? Do you dump a bunch of chemical in it, if you're going to start up your boiler for the first time? And then how do you process the next like 2 months until the boiler is like deep in the winter?
Yeah. So I think first and foremost, a lot of issues that I see to start up. You've got all you've got all summer to do something, yet none of us really do much with it. So right now I've got a list of customers that we need to get out to and descale some of their boilers from those that we've taken over. So like, guys, we've had all summer to do this, but all good on that front. It's just funny how everything in life's, no matter if it's boiler or whatever, like, everything in your house. Like I wanted to get around to insulating that door or something, right? And you wait until it gets cold out. So, so a lot of times the steam traps aren't properly working. So our condensate coming back is not that great. So I think that's one of the first things to check out when you're getting into a new season is, all right, let's take the time and let's look at our steam traps. Let's make sure we're getting good condensate return, because that's going to directly lead to efficiency and lower cost and utilities moving forward, as well as just give us in general more consistent water to treat. So as we're starting up, yeah, you want to just bring up your chemistry in there, right? So a lot of times you drain the boiler, You laid it up dry because there has to be a boiler inspection over the summer. So close it back up. We fill it, and then we get to adding chemistry to it. So we just slowly bring up the chemistry. I wouldn't say necessarily give it a huge hit to start with, but we have there are a number of different chemistry programs we can follow, and with any steam boiler system, there's really kind of three things we're looking to do with chemistry, and the first one is to prevent scaling within the boiler. Second one is to prevent corrosion, and the third one is to prevent corrosion within the boiler. Then the third one is to prevent corrosion within the condensate piping. So the chemistry looks to avoid each one of those, and there's different types of chemistry we can use to do that with. But as you start up, and you bring that chemistry level up, you can work it up. You've also got to cycle up the boiler. So as you cycle up the boiler, your concentration of chemistry is going to go up too. So I just like to say, walk into it. Walk into the concentration of sulfite, of alkalinity, of OH that you need, and your pH, and you'll get there.
Can you explain cycles of concentration?
Sure. So when your makeup water is going to have, and there's multiple different types of cycles of concentration, but we'll stick with conductivity. So most of your makeup water is going to have a certain conductivity to it. City of Chicago conductivity for makeup water is about 300 to 305. It can go a little bit higher or something like that, right? The 0 P alkalinity, 110 M total alkalinity, and about 140 parts per million hardness. So each one of those tells you a little bit more information about the water. It's not particularly hard water here, but we do recommend softeners on, at least a softener on any system. So when we cycle up the boiler and get a concentration of solids in there, if the conductivity in this case, we're talking about conductivity. So if the conductivity rises from 300 to 600, we now have 2 cycles of concentration. If it raises to 900, we're at 3 cycles of concentration. So it's how many cycles above how many times above the base conductivity or above the base hardness level that you're getting to. And each one of those tells you a little bit more information about it. For instance, in a cooling tower, typically City of Chicago, we are limited to about just under 4 cycles of concentration with city hardness. Hardness gets much above 4 cycles. We're going to start to plate that. We can't keep that in solution, and it's going to start to scale up the towers. So we don't really go above that. And so in a boiler, so any of these, so our ratio of cycles of concentration in conductivity versus hardness can tell us some information in cooling towers. In a boiler, we just start to cycle that up until we get to a certain point. So if you're at 6,000 conductivity, that's a number of cycles above 300 conductivity in makeup water. So it's to boil it down, and use that as a pun intended, it's the amount of times above city conductivity or other baseline factor in city water that your water is running at.
What general range for conductivity are you looking for in a low pressure steam boiler for heat?
So normally I'm looking at anywhere between 3,500 and 7,000 for the most part. So it's a pretty large range. The higher you get, the more efficient you are with energy, the more efficient you are with water. So you do want to get that up, but you also have to look at what the risks are in scaling and how much control do I have over the boiler and so on before deciding what that is.
And what happens when it gets too high?
Usually you're going to get either corrosion or scaling, one of the two of those. So in a system, let's say that you are not using any condensate return and you're completely dumping all your condensate and you're just getting makeup water. Even if it is softened, some hardness is going to sneak through. That hardness is going to start to concentrate in the boiler and start to drop out, no matter how little it is. Now, the chemistry will make up for some of that, so it's not It's most of the time not a huge deal, but you just have to keep that in mind. For a system that we're getting all condensate returned back, it's more it's less of a concern, and you'll want to cycle that up even more.
Yeah, condensate is gold, and I think
Yes.
a lot of people just think they see just water coming back, and they're like, "Oh, it's the same thing as my garden hose." Like, it's just water or whatever. But it's like, well, you've already treated that water, and it's already heated, and you know, there's payback calculators for, and the difference between 100% makeup versus like 10% makeup, it's a huge payback, especially when you're talking about, a building with 30 floors and, you're constantly using water and all this stuff. Your water bill will be huge. So on the condensate return side, do you see a lot of carbonic acid formation, a lot of issues with that? Can you talk about what causes carbonic acid and how you prevent that?
Sure. So, carbonic acid is what's formed in your steam condensate lines, and it's what causes corrosion within our condensate. And what happens a lot of times is that if we're always testing for iron within the boiler, as well as within the feed water tank or deaerator if you have it, as well as within the condensate system if we can get a sample and it's not a vacuum return system. We can get one from a vacuum return system, just gets a little bit more difficult. So a lot of times that iron that's in the boiler may or may not be from the boiler or the feed water tank. It's actually coming back from the condensate and then concentrating within the boiler itself. So we get the carbonic acid from carbonate, which comes in through our makeup water. Carbonate, it's non-condensable, so it will flash off with the boiler inside of it, and then turn into carbonic acid within the condensate. So this is what lowers the pH in the condensate, and then a lot of times our condensate piping is black iron or mild steel instead of stainless, so it will corrode it. That goes back into our condensate receivers, goes back into our feed water tank, and just continues the cycle over and over again. So there's a couple of ways. There's two ways to really neutralize this. And the first one is chemical. So we can put a neutralizing amine into the boiler that flashes off with it and then goes into the piping to raise the pH and neutralize that carbonic acid that's forming. We can direct inject into the main condensate line, which is the preferred method because we get much more of a hit with that, much more effective doing that than trying to have it flash off with the steam in the boiler. It's much more consistent as well. So between those two, we're not saying we're going to eliminate the problem. We are dealing with the problem that's at hand. We are neutralizing the acid and we're raising the pH. So now getting back to pH, iron likes pHs above 10.5. So we don't need to get to that necessarily within the condensate, but we definitely cannot be acidic within there. So chemistry. We put chemistry in there, it neutralizes the carbonic acid. Second way is is pre-treatment. So there used to be, and I still have a couple accounts, at least one account that has a dealkalizer in order to remove remove the carbonate and the makeup water up front. But a lot of right now, most of the industry has changed to small RO systems. So RO systems have become much more affordable, and they can even replace today in some instances your water softener. So you're just sending the water directly through an RO for treatment. Remove any of the not only just ion exchange, but you're removing any of the hardness that's in there, as well as removing the carbonate, so that it's not even going to affect your condensate there.
You said direct injection. How do you direct inject chemical into the condensate system if you have, 15 floors and you have radiators all over the place? Like, you're not injecting at every single radiator. Where's that main point that you're injecting to protect the condensate piping?
So you're normally looking for into the main steam header that's then feeding all the floors. So it will follow it up and it will mix with the steam that's going up there.
Got it. Got it. do you have any experiences or stories with building owners neglecting water treatment for low pressure steam systems, and, you know, maybe any disasters that you couldn't fix or ones that you did fix? Want to hear some, successes, so that it's not always doom and gloom if you do mess up, as long as you have the right professional to come fix it.
Exactly. So we don't have any near misses or anything like that within our history here. Certainly from I can go back to one story my dad was telling me, and you go into this a lot, which I think is key with your training into making sure that low water cutoff is tested daily, blown down, tested daily. Those that are professionals in our business, I don't think we can harp on that enough because it is an absolute safety must to do so. And certainly, so it hasn't happened with us, luckily, but I do remember in a building, my dad telling me that this boiler operator changed over, and they blew down, but didn't connect that. Oh, we're not blowing down the low water cutoff. We're just bottom blowing down. So it went into a situation where uh, the water level got low, no water in the boiler, and the heater kept continuing to fire. Luckily, someone caught it before water was able to enter the boiler and cause any sort of issue with that. But it was a near miss, right? Because somebody wasn't blowing down the low water cutoff. So with us, one of the probably the largest success that we've had lately is on some vapor power recirculating coil boilers, and these are not easy boilers to treat. And I've posted a couple of pictures on LinkedIn about them because they're pretty unique, and you don't see them all that often versus just standard low pressure steam boilers. But these are recirculating boilers that have a steam drum in it, so the coils get very hot in them. Water's going to go through that coil. It's going to be recirculated between that and a steam drum. Within the steam drum, that's where the vapor change chain, or I'm losing my words here, but the phase change occurs. Sorry.
It flashes off due to high pressure to low pressure, the expansion of the water.
Yep.
Yep.
So we get a phase change there, but then the water continually recirculates past. So it's not a one pass boiler, but every time it's going through there, it still concentrates. You still have very high skin temps. So there's a couple of little things that have to be really well detailed there for a program to work. So this particular customer had a number of leaking heat exchangers, and they really weren't using any condensate coming back. So it was pure makeup water, or 100%, almost 100% makeup water that they were using. So a couple of things were happening. One, there's a slight amount of hardness that's leaking that's going to get through your softeners typically. That's of course then going to concentrate in the boiler. They were running these boilers at a high conductivity of around 7 to 10,000. And it's with the skin temps that they had, there was really not much that was going to stay in solution. So they've number of times scaled up previously in the past year, the boilers doing this. Second to that is using 100% makeup. Typically your deaerator is not spec for that. So it's not spec to bring up the temperature. And remember, the deaerator, for review here, is supposed to get the water hot to reduce the amount of oxygen that's in there. So that oxygen is then going to enter the boiler and create corrosion through oxidation. So with oxygen levels being higher or dissolved oxygen being higher than they should, as well as the extremely hot skin temps here, most of the time when we're looking at a standard boiler, standard fire tube boiler, sulfite, it's the main oxygen scavenger that will typically be used within a boiler system, steam boiler system, is going to be in the 20 to 60 parts per million range. Well, within a coil boiler like this with extremely hot skin temps, you're supposed to run between 100 and 200 parts per million here. Any oxygen, because of those skin temps, is really going to start to cause corrosion. So again, it's nothing that was very difficult, but there's certain things that you need to pay attention to and really have detailed. And we cleaned up the system. So wasn't magic, right? But There's real specifics on some boilers that we need to know.
Shout out Vapor Power, Franklin
Yeah.
Park, Illinois. Yeah, I have a ton of experience with Vapor Power boilers. The Circulatic. I mean, I've been told, it's technically a steam generator. Now, I guess according to ASME, it's a boiler, but it's if you are used to normal boilers and then you see a vapor Circulatic, most people are so confused and they're like, where's the water? Why is there a pump? What's this drum? And, why do we open, the front and everything? But yeah, I've seen those coils get auction pitting. And if it's on, like, normally it'll do it like right on the bottom center of the coil. And sometimes you can weld a patch in. But if you get auction pitting throughout the entire coil, that whole coil has to be replaced, which is a huge process. I've done it before, but it's a huge process. It is not very cheap. And I promise any boiler owner, for any single boiler, that proper water treatment is always cheaper than the repair that comes without proper water treatment. And you may be able to get away for a month without proper water treatment, but you won't be able to get away for a year without proper water treatments.
Exactly.
On the process side, do you commonly catch heat exchangers that are leaking? I know I've had experience with I think the manufacturer. It's basically like molasses, and they would have heat exchanger leaks and get like molasses back in their boiler, and they weren't testing their condensate system, and the heat exchanger would leak. You would get molasses in the condensate, and then it'd come back. I mean, is that something part of the testing process that you're doing?
Yeah, and that's really a lot of the value that we add to that. I feel like as water treaters, we should be adding to our customers. And so if we're one recent one that's at a manufacturing plant, they're a plating plant, and we go in for our monthly check-in, and like, hey, we got a lot of stuff that came up in the boiler. There's just a lot of, they call them floaties in the or floaters in the sight glasses, and I'm like, okay, well, it's probably some scale that got loose or something like that. Or I'm just asking the normal questions. All right, did you have a startup or shutdown? What line was started up? What line was shut down? Just some normal things like that. I'm like, okay, great. Let me check it out. So as I'm just going through my tests, and I get to the boiler, and I'm like, the pH is a little bit lower than I expect. Well, all right, something's maybe going on here. And then you get to the condensate, and the pH is like 4 or something like that. So clearly they had a leaking heat exchanger. It got into the condensate and loosened up all this, all the scale that might have been in there from previous years. So in those cases, we're catching the problem. We're catching it before it does anything else to the boiler itself, and they're able to take the heat exchanger out of service, replace it, and put it back in. So, again, the water treatment and the rates that you're paying for water treatment, and a lot of these times, just one of those catches is going to be significant compared to the repair in the boiler that you have. Another one that I can think of is, and again, this just takes, you definitely should be detail oriented when, or at least I look at it as detail oriented when we're water treater going into a site and testing different points along the way, even with the makeup. So in this particular case, we were asked to come in and be a consult to what's going on in there right now, and so I just managed. I looked over the system, said, okay, here is where the points are. Here is where I can take samples from, and really start to see what's going on with the system. So this one had a steam boiler in it. They had both a water softener as well as a dealk that's on it. Again, dealkalizers you don't see too often nowadays, but you will come across them occasionally. And so I'm just got my conductivity on the boiler, and it's reading about correct, like what I would expect it to. But chlorides were a little bit high, and the reason you just kind of check for chlorides in a screening is because if the water softener is malfunctioning, it will dump a significant amount of sodium chloride into the potentially into the system. So check for chlorides, make sure that that's low, and it was a little bit higher than expected. So we go back. I keep going down the testing and testing the makeup water coming from the dealk um, and water softener, and the conductivity is off the chart at like 6 or 7,000. Compared to city water in Chicago, remember, is about 300. So we're significantly higher here. So we're able to identify this problem. We're able to get somebody in for very cheap at this point to just fix the water or fix the dealkalizer and the water softener, confirm they were both working, get them back in service, and away we go. Disaster averted. And certainly, again, that little extra step right there is that value that we're providing in averting these huge disasters.
Yeah, I always try to kind of relate it back to something that people can understand, and it's changing the oil in your car. If you were to drive out of your driveway and just drive for the whole month, you would have to change your oil monthly at least. And say that's at the 5,000 mile mark. Well, if you went to 7,000 miles, your engine isn't going to blow up. If you went to 10, it's probably not going to blow up. If you went to 15, you're probably getting there. But if you go to 20, you're eventually going to have engine issues. So, if you go to 20,000 miles, what you've saved on 4 oil changes, but then you ruin your engine and now you're out 10 grand. So, what's 4 oil changes cost? Like 200, $300. Same thing at a much larger scale with water treatment. Yes, you are paying this bill monthly, quarterly, whatever the contract is, but don't look at that bill as a cost. Look at that as a preventative cost. Hey, we spent 10 grand on water treatment services this year. Great. So that we don't have to spend 100 grand on emergency repair services this year. And when you frame it like that, it's easier, especially to try to communicate with customers of, hey, like this is a necessary process for a cooling system, for a heating system, steam, even hydronic, and staying on top of it over the long run is way better than, waiting for disaster, doing the emergency repair, then being like, well, this is never going to happen. And then getting a water treater in, and then trying to, do that for a couple of years and then tapering that out and then seeing it as another cost. The pain of the emergency repair is gone. And then, doing the whole thing again, especially with older buildings, the whole system isn't, super easy to get to, and it can cause a lot of issues, especially when you have multi-level floors all above each other. How do you go to a building owner? Maybe they have water treatment company, maybe they don't, maybe they do it themselves. What is your, I don't want to say sales pitch, but I don't have anything better. What is your sales pitch to say, hey, we're going to be your partner, and yes, it costs you money to hire us, but we're the experts and we're your partner in this so that you can look like the hero to your boss or, the building owner, building manager.
Yeah, so a lot of times we will get references into a building, right? So they're either at a point that, one, they're looking for a different water, or they're at a bid point, right? So they need to bid out whatever it is that they're doing, or two, they are having problems right now. So so we come in and we've got to essentially sell us. Our biggest selling point is you're getting us. You're not getting a somebody that's not an expert in this. That I'm not a salesman that's coming to you and saying, hey, use our product, use our services. And by the way, you're getting somebody else to come out and look at this. And it might be somebody different next time. And if they might leave the company. So don't worry, we'll train somebody else up and put them back in. No, you're getting either me, you're getting Brian, and you're getting that combined 40 plus years of experience behind it. So we come in and we just really take an expert approach to it. So expert full systems approach, and we create if we can get to the point of creating that survey and getting samples of their water and testing it, we will provide that survey service report as to really here's what's going on within your water. And I'm gonna give it a completely fair shake. If you're doing good right now, if it's looking okay right now, I'll say, yeah, looking good, with a couple of these concerns. And then sometimes it won't be looking very good. So there's just different ways that I feel like customers will look at that in terms of, okay, I'm really getting a fair shake right now. If everything's looking good, great. That's great for me to know that, and it's establishing that trust with the customer that I'm really not giving it a fair shake. No, I am giving it a fair shake. I'm telling them what's happening. And then second to that is there are definitely some customers that want that expertise and that telling us what to do. So there's been a few that I've gone into that I've said, hey, you've got this tower or whether it's a tower or a steam boiler system, the connectivity has been off the charts. So either haven't blown down the boiler recently, or they haven't calibrated their connectivity probe within the tower itself. So I've just gone in there and said, hey, I need you to blow down this right now. It's just not in a good condition. And so just doing that right away and telling them why they need to blow down, what the range should be, and just putting that little bit of expertise in it has said, okay, I think you're the guys to go with here. So our reports are just made to not necessarily give a whole bunch of information to somebody, but really tell a narrative as to here's what's actually going on with your system. So, so it's really, I don't know how else to describe it other than, and this is the only thing I kind of know, is just it's really overwhelming, just overwhelming, acceptability or overwhelming competence is the way I like to put it.
No, that's good because, yeah, as you said, and I don't know what the competition is like, but the average, I want to say like quote unquote corporate company, and I've seen it in water treatment, but they send the salesman in there. We're going to do everything. We're amazing. Maybe they're from a chemical company, and they have this logo that is recognizable. It means something, and then they may sell a contract, and then the actual person that shows up is way less experienced, way less trained. And water treatment, it's not and you can speak to this, it's not you come in and just press a couple buttons here and there. As we were talking about earlier, like if your boiler system isn't doing steady state operation, you have to make constant adjustments. And if you're not in tune, it's almost like a relationship with the building, and you're constantly dating the building. And if you're not in tune with what the building's doing, with the processes of the owner, with the, maybe the building engineers in house and what they're doing, what their chemical ordering cycle is and everything. If you just have random people showing up or people who don't understand what's happening, then it's very difficult to accurately do water treatment analysis and then also keep that going month over month for the life of the building or the life of the contract, so that everything does stay kind of pretty even keel instead of peaks and valleys of trying to catch up, delivering chemical, showing up and, oh shoot, we're out of chemical here and there. And yeah, because it's never a good sign when the person showing up just, I mean, it's not to say that they don't care, but they're just like checking a box. And that's where you get an expert like you to come in, you understand the building. It's always you showing up. You start developing the relationship with the customer. They see your face, and that relationship means something. Even in 2025, when we're trying to automate everything and AI this, and humans are replaceable, and humans are, just how to. So I'm super interested.
Can AI eventually, or can AI today figure out that a low water cutoff is not working? Can they figure out that this is a common one that we see a lot, is the makeup valve for the tower tank just gets stuck open. The building engineer usually doesn't even recognize that until we come in and we're like, something doesn't feel right here, and the numbers aren't going correctly, and you just you look around, right? So use your eyes, and AI cannot do that. So that's what we can do here.
Yeah, the AI conversation is interesting. Right now, a lot of it's overblown. It's coming. It is a thing. It's basically the internet boom. So think of, I would say we're probably in 1997, maybe 1998, maybe even earlier than that. But it, from what I've read, this is going to be a bigger change to the world than what the internet did. But even the internet didn't probably mature till 2015, 2016. People were getting smartphones that were, decently good, but and websites, looked decent, around that time. But with AI, I guess anything's possible, but it's the amount of sensors that have to go in, and then that's data. And then the problem is now you have to interpret that data. It's very easy to collect data, but it's then what do you do with that? And that's, people like to throw around AI that's like some magic bullet. It is, it thinks from the information that it's been given, and while they're always, I guess they're, going toward, that it's constantly improving, and I don't understand it all the time. Gonna have somebody else on here that's an AI expert, but
Yeah.
people, people just, the uneducated person just thinks it's all knowing and always brings back accurate information. And even right now, and I'm not, I have very little trust in what AI does when it comes down to the technical side. And I am sure there will be some water treatment company that rolls out an AI platform, an AI troubleshooter help for water treatment. It's probably possible now, but it has to have good information going in. And if you don't have sensors on all your data points of your building, then a human has to show up and look at it. And even if you do have some sensors, it's okay, what do we do with that? So there is a lot of infrastructure around it beyond just the typical, oh, we're just going to download AI into our building management system and now everything's taken care of and we don't need a human anymore. Like, it's, maybe we can listen to this in 2040 and I could be like, I was an idiot in 2025. But, if only I knew what was happening. But, it's going to affect the tech world way before HVAC. But I mean, I would say even with, the connected buildings that we have now, I've seen boiler rooms installed where they put flow meters on like everything. If it's a pipe that has water in it, it gets a flow meter. And I'm like, all right, well, like, what are we doing with all this information? And it just goes to totalizers in their BMS system, and nobody does anything with that information. And then so it's like, well, if the flow meter breaks, if nobody's doing anything with the information, they're not going to spend $2,000 on a new flow meter. So then all
Right.
these sensors and stuff kind of just, it starts dwindling down, and then you get this hodgepodge of stuff that works or doesn't work. And it's important to just understand that just because you have data doesn't mean that data, you have to have somebody to interpret that. And as of right now, it's still the expert, such as you, for water treatment. So I want to go back, some listeners may open a low water cutoff and may open the bottom of a boiler, especially a fire tube boiler, and see brownish red mud. What causes that mud? What causes it to build up? How do you prevent it?
Yeah. So that's either so that's typically a sludge of scale and iron, is or carbonate scale and iron that's in there. And when that occurs down there, we're getting back to these cycles of concentration. So if you have a little bit of iron that's going to be corroding your boil, it is going to be concentrating and concentrating and concentrating until you blow it down and clear that out. So we can't completely stop corrosion. It's going to occur no matter what. And as your treatment becomes better, and both pre-treatment, so if we're softening that water, as well as keeping up with whatever that inhibitor might be, whether it's an actual inhibitor or an oxygen scavenger, that is certainly, as we get to more steady state, going to come down. Now, if you're going up and down, as we were discussing, in let's say these shoulder seasons or just in general in concentration because we're not blowing down consistently, that's going to certainly start to fluctuate in terms of what you're going to see coming out the bottom of that boiler right there. So the other part to it is some of that iron is also going to come from the condensate system if we're getting condensate return and we're not treating that. So it's going to come from it's going to come from the condensate system, go into your condensate receivers. If you have a feed water tank, of course, to the feed water tank, and then into the boiler where it's going to concentrate in there, just much like you would have a pot on the stove that as you let water boil on it, everything in it is going to concentrate down. So when you blow that down, you're clearing that out, which is great. And as you get to more steady state and you get your chemistry more stabilized, that's going to start to significantly go down. So it's consistency is really the key to getting that to go down. Now, when it comes to, let's say, sometimes there's a long pipe that when you open the valve, the water has to travel through, whether it's the low water cutoff or the bottom blowdown, it has to travel through that valve. Well, that valve is just sitting there after it getting wet last time, and now it's just oxidizing away. So a lot of times, if you have a clean system, you're just clearing out that piping that it's going through, and it's not really iron from your boiler. So it can be one of those two things, and a lot of times from the low water cutoff is because water's just kind of sitting stagnant in there and causing some of that corrosion without turning over. So let it go till it's clear. If it doesn't turn clear, then that's when it's you've got your good sample from the boiler, instead of just the first pull on it that might be influenced by some of these other factors I was talking about.
Yeah, blow down your boiler. I knew a guy, used to work with a guy, a water treater, great guy. We would share communication back and forth on what was going on with the plant. We didn't work for the same company, but we're on a team. I did the service, he did the water treatment, and he would always tell me that he would never tell a customer that they're blowing down their boiler too much, because the second he did that, they would cut back to never enough. And he's like, I can deal with a little bit extra chemical, obviously, he's selling the chemical, he's getting a little bit more money, but he's like, I would rather have a little extra chemical and to deal with that than to deal with a boiler that is not being blown down and always playing catch up and not getting the proper water treatment on the boiler side. So
I'd say focus on the consistency first, right? If you get that consistent blowdown, now I can load the chemistry correctly. Now things start to become way more predictable, right? So
Yeah. If you're, building maintenance or service engineer, whatever, if you blow down the boiler whenever you think about it and it's not scheduled, or it's not the first thing done in the morning, or, if you don't do it, to schedule it 3 times a week, then your water treater coming after you has a very difficult time, because maybe you remembered for 3 weeks in a row, but then got busy and forgot for 3 weeks. And now they come in and it's all over the place, and 1 month was good and the next month the boiler looks like brown water, and they're like, oh, what's happening? And then they go, oh yeah, I forgot to blow down the boiler the last 3 weeks. And it's a team effort on all fronts. Going over to the communication, interested, how do you make your service reports?
So we have a narrative that we focus on. Think of a college or high school lab report where you're going through the different systems and explaining what's going on. That's the main course of our service report. So I like to break it down into, here's what's actually going on, and here's why you need to do these things, such as blow down more or potentially blow down less, and give recommendations on such. So, for instance, I will recommend all the time, create a sign-off sheet for blowing down that somebody can sign off all the time. I'm happy to do so for you. Don't So I'll offer things like that all the time and create or add it if they are on board with the operating book that we give them for water treatment. If they're on board with it, I'll create another sign off on it for the blowdown that they can use and have everything in one place. But I'll go through what we do is we go through each system and we say, all right, steam boiler 1, steam boiler system, tower system, chilled water system, closed loop 7, however many there are there. And we just give an analysis as to what's going on there. I take a picture of each and every bottle that I sample so that there is um, there is some sort of a record of that. You can see a lot of times when we take over account from the dark water that it starts with to the clear water that we end up with. And then you can see the consistency over time. So if there is a change, it's real easy to go back and see what's going on there. Now, most in water treatment, the main form of communication industry wide happens to be something called the grid. And the grid is for lack of a better term, just a giant spreadsheet that lists out what the particular water loop is and then what the values are for each one of the different criteria below them. So what's the pH? What's the conductivity? How much chemical is in there? And then there's ranges that are on there, and you can. There's one particular software out there that's probably the most used. That will say, this is good or this is bad, and you can put ranges in there. But at the end of the day, I don't feel like that really provides a ton of value to the customer. Okay, you're giving me a grid, and I'm looking at here. All right, sulfite is 18. You're telling me that that's low, that's orange or something. What does that mean, guys? So I want to go into detail and say sulfite at 18 is not where we want to be, but also context behind that. Your boilers are at a very low conductivity. So as soon as we cycle them up and get the blowdown more consistent, that sulfite's going to rise above 20 or to 30, and we're going to be in range. So I'm not just going to load it up with chemistry. If this is where we have to stay, okay, I'll give that context behind it and explain why. So there's a lot of context that has to go into this to really make sure that the staff is getting the information that they can act on and make the system better.
I was just talking about what program you make your report with, but I really liked that answer. That was excellent.
Oh, okay.
I didn't want to stop you. You really got into it. That was awesome. But I was just talking about, like, I see, service reports. I see, that one, that your electronic reports, that's big. Even in 2025, there's still people doing paper, but do you use Excel or do you use a program?
So we chose to go with Excel, and I just wrote just used some of my VBA knowledge, and I just kind of wrote some pretty simplistic coding to automate a little bit of the work, make it a little bit easier to set up per customer, and so that we've got a form when we come on that we can customize and set up for an account, and then transfer over to more of a presentable form for the customer, and then transfer that over. It sounds a lot longer than it really is here. And then transfer that over to a document that we can, that's mostly pre-populated, that we can completely customizable when we do it. But it really allows us to give that narrative to the customer there.
And are you just like emailing these reports to the contact?
Yes. Yep. That's our typical form there.
I've had experience in the past where, maybe I show up somewhere and I'm like, hey, your water treatment's way off. And my contact, same contact as the water, maybe it's the maintenance manager, whatever. They open up their inbox and it is 400 unread emails and they're getting, 50 an hour or whatever it is. How do you like check out with your contact? Do you try to, because I've seen it where water treatment companies and even service companies will send reports and those reports never even get opened until somebody asks about them or until there's a, issue, and then they go back and read it and then they'll look through. I've seen it. They look through the recommendations 2 months ago. They're like, oh, they did recommend this. Hey, hey, this is getting low. Or you need to reorder it. And then you show up again and it's like, hey, we're out of chemical now. And they're like, well, you never told me to reorder it. Well, I told you in my service report. But I found that, email, when I was, doing service, it would email a report. But always trying to check out with the customer contact, and that communication is so big. I guess what are you doing? Because I'm always curious to learn,
Yeah.
how other companies communicate, because if a customer feels good about spending money, they will spend money no matter what amount of money that they are doing or the work that you're doing. If they feel like they are uselessly spending money, even if you're doing an amazing job, they will get rid of you, and you'll wonder why. You're like, hey, I was doing an amazing job providing great water treatment service. But if they don't feel the value for their money, then even if you write it all in a report, and this is where the human factor comes in, and being the expert and being able to talk about it, I guess, like, yeah, just tell me your process of, what do you do typically at the end of a treatment visit? How do you communicate to your customers? Do you call them after, call them before? Let's hear it.
Any and all the above, right? So the most important part of the service visit is the check-in and check-out, and sometimes they don't happen all the time, right? There's a couple places I go into, and it's maybe once, once every other time that I get to have physical or get to have actual communication in person with the contact, because they're just got 18,000 meetings on the board for for a day that can only hold 10 meetings. So okay, great. So what do we do there, right? And depending on how, and so you've got this relationship with the customer, and you've got this relationship with the system. All these systems, like, I feel like I've got just as much a relationship with. Like, I go to, some systems. I'm like, hey, how are my how my kids doing here, right? Referring to the two boilers that they have, or the two towers that they have, or something like that, right? So you have you've got the down low as to what's going on with the system. What's going on to it, and then you got to figure out what works for the customer. I have one customer that I don't think they read many of my reports I send out. I still put just as much time into it. I still send it to them, and I put a summary like an executive summary at the top with, here are my recommendations, along with, at the end of the report, here's a recap of my recommendations that I'm putting in here. In the email itself, I give a quick synopsis with those recommendations and mission critical items. But like with this particular customer, I really know they don't look at that all that often, even though I mean, I know they'll look at it eventually. But as soon as I'm done with the visit, if I don't see them, even if I do see them and tell them through this, I send them a text of mission critical items. So they respond to text really well, and a lot of customers will do this. And here is the list of mission critical items, even if I did chat with you. So getting back to the most important part of the visit is the check-in and the check-out. On checkout, I'm telling them exactly what the mission critical items are. Sometimes I'll write it out for them. I'll send them a text afterwards for it, and then I'll even give a follow-up later on if it's a mission critical thing. Hey, did you check on the connectivity for the boiler and increase the blowdown? Or did you get this part in to make sure that the fill of the tank is working okay, X, Y, and Z, right? So did you get the PO for this so we can get in here and fix your pump, or something along those lines, right? So you really have to have, you really have to be on top of it and know what the customer is responding to, because at the end of the day, one, you're still selling yourself to more hit your point of, hey, I'm doing a good job here. I want you to know I'm doing a good job here, and I want you to know that we are avoiding potential disasters that might be costing you lots of money down the road. But second, there's value in me being here. I'm going to prove that value, and I'm going to make sure that you know what I'm doing, and make sure that you know what recommendations I'm giving to you. So any and all the above with the relationship with the customer. If you know they read emails, great. I'm going to send that out. And if I get a response every once in a while, I know they're coming back. But sometimes there'll even be a situation where I'm sending it out to a director of facilities, the chief engineer, and then an associate engineer. I won't hear anything back from the chief or the associate. I'll hear back from the director. So I'm like, okay, at least one person's reading that. But I know the associate, who's my direct contact and who's the one who really keeps track of the water treatment on a day-to-day basis, he probably gets to emails a couple, maybe once to twice a week. So I send him a text. If I didn't see him on site, which I almost will always do in this particular case, I'll still send him a text. Here are the things that we need to do, and then I'll follow up with him a little bit later as well. So again, it's that really understanding the relationship with your customer, or establishing that relationship with your customer and understanding how they communicate. I don't think it's different than a lot of other relationships that you have, in terms of this person likes to communicate in one way or the other. So it's using skills that you already have, but applying them to really being on top of what the business requires here.
Communication is key in everything you do. You're constantly selling yourself. Yes, going back to the service reports, it's always write the book, write all the details, and know that your customer may not read them, but those details are kind of what they're paying you for, even if they read them or don't read them. But it's also understanding that your customer contact, you are the expert. They are relying on you to take care of the water treatment. And while the details, like you provide them the details, and while they could read them or whatnot, it doesn't really matter because that's your expert, advice or whatever that's going on that. But it's not always up to them to like read that and understand that and then make decisions. As the professional, as you said, mission critical things. Hey, I noticed this thing, and you bring it up above the average noise of their communication. And to somebody who's super busy and is just making decisions all day, it's they don't know that, hey, our conductivity is low on the boiler. Then they go, okay, cool. Like, what do I do with that? It's, hey, we need this, and here's what I think we should do. Yes or no. And then now they can easily make a decision. And instead of like having to read a report and saying, hey, here's my report. There were a couple issues. Let me know what you want to do. Well, now they have to spend time interpreting the report and figuring it out. And I was always taught, I've heard in other podcasts and books of, if you're going to your manager or to somebody that needs to make a decision with a problem, always come with a solution. And it makes people's lives so much easier instead of relying on them to interpret the data themselves. Because if they're interpreting the data, then it's like, well, why are they paying you, the expert? You're interpreting the data, and they're just making decisions. They don't have time to be an expert on water treatment and do everything else. That's not their job, and that's why they're paying you. And that's where that communication piece comes in. But it's also realizing that you need to write that book, because over the course of a year, if they go, what am I paying you for? Then you can pull out that entire book and novels of notes. And it's, this is what you're paying for and all this stuff. And these are all the recommendations. And, I sent you these texts and these emails here and you didn't reply. And, you build this mountain of proof, even if it's not responded to, because you are putting the step forward. You are extending the outreach as the expert. And I think a lot of people, even on the service side for like HVAC boilers, service technicians, one of the top struggles for companies that I talk to are they can't get their service technicians to write more than 2 sentences about their day. So, we're billing out at, say, $150 an hour. Service technicians there for 8 hours, say the bill is $1,000, and then the service report has 2 sentences on it. It's like, all right, well, let's flip this around. As you as a person, would you go get your car taken care of, and the auto shop says, found problem, fixed part, installed, everything works, $1,000? Would you feel good if they did that? Would you feel like, oh yeah, like they're not screwing me over and, all this stuff? And it's not that, you as a service technician could have done everything proper and, did 8 hours of pure work and it's 100% justified. But if that value is not related back on that service report, it essentially didn't happen, especially the longer that time goes. 30, your company bills out whatever, and then 20, 30 days later, they're looking at the bill to pay it, and they're like, all right, what'd this technician do? And there's 2 little sentences there for 8 hours of work. And, there's no value communication there. What you did is entirely lost that day because you have to condense your entire day into that service report. And that's communication, communication, communication. And I think that's lost on a lot of people. They think, they think it's good enough to be an expert water treater or an expert technician. Hey, I fixed the problem. Why does it matter what I wrote? Because the people making decisions and the people paying out the money are looking at what you wrote, and they weren't there watching you fix the problem. So you didn't communicate fixing the problem on your service report. So essentially, if it's not written down, it didn't happen. And
Exactly. Yeah. And
yeah.
and for those out there that are thinking, all right, how do I distill my day down? One thing I've actually got written that I've had written on my desk for many years, and there's many of these types of strategies out there you can use, but this one particular I've got here, it's called cause, consequence, and correction. So as you're writing something out and trying to say, what did I do? Okay, what's the cause of the problem that I'm looking at? What is the consequence of this? So if I don't fix this, here's what's going to happen. And then here was the correction that I did. And it really provides that context behind what you did and gives your mind a way to work through this that kind of allows you to create an elevator pitch for each and every single one of your the issues that you went through during the day.
So I want to turn over to training, education, outreach. So water treatment is a industry that is invisible to the public. And are you doing anything? I know, you're a small company, limited budget. Are you doing any outreach to schools or people, the general public, and saying, hey, this is what we do? Maybe even just, being in a parade for a city. I've seen that, like just anything. Are you doing anything on that front?
So we do reach out to the local chief engineers union and the local or chief operating engineers. Local 399 is in Chicago here, so we participate a lot in their events. Brian is actually an associate professor and teaches the water treatment class at the local union hall. So that gives us a lot of outreach there. I also get involved in the local manufacturing organizations that are in the county as well as in the Chicago area. I've got a lot of connections with my previous life into the plastics world, so I'm constantly reaching out in that area. Just because plastics manufacturing it does rely a lot on good water treatment. That is one of those things that like anything in water treatment, it's okay until something really bad happens, and then all of a sudden it really needs to be fixed, and it's at the top of the list, and then it gets fixed, and it's up to us to make sure it stays that way and stays on the customer's mind. So in those sense, we are definitely growing in terms of kind of pinpointing where we want to go out next with reach out. But I will say, even within the some of the buildings that we're in, certainly we've had some either employees of that company that have become interested in, well, what actually goes on behind the scenes here, like what goes on that allows, and when like what goes on that allows me to sit at my desk at 72 degrees plus or minus 1 degree, and there's a lot that goes behind it that that just goes unnoticed, and there's a lot of interest in it once they start to learn about it. So as some of them start to know what you do, they start to ask that. And not only does that sometimes get you a connection in there, but it creates another appreciation. And though it's not like reaching out, going in a parade or something like that, it's very grassroots in terms of, hey, here's what actually goes on in the boiler or the chiller room to allow you to sit at your desk and do that. So the next time you think about opening up a work order because it's 70 degrees instead of 71 and a half, hold off on that for a moment.
Yeah, there's a lot of unappreciation for built environment. And I mean, I would say we're not even a century into a built environment world. Like, so I moved to Florida. I live in Florida, and it's really blown up in the last 10 years in population. and um, I forget when it was, 1800s maybe earlier than that. I believe the Spanish or something were sending their prisoners to Florida just because it was just a terrible place to live and nobody wanted to live there. But with Willis Carrier, the inventor of modern air conditioning, he brought about being able to live in Florida and Texas and Arizona and Vegas, and that built environment, people assume it just always exists. And yeah, it's huge to be able to go into a building and not have to think about, hey, it's too hot or too cold in here. And there's tons of people and engineering and systems behind the scenes that are all hidden that make it like that, so that you can sit at your desk and pound away on the keyboard for 8 hours and be comfortable. Yeah, it's something we as an HVAC industry, boilers, anything, need to get better at telling people. We can't assume. Oftentimes people assume they know that how a building is heated and cooled, and even in residential, people will say they don't even understand how their house is heated and cooled. They just think there's this display on the wall, and whatever that display says, my house will be. And if I turn it down lower, the air blows colder. And it's like, well, it's not actually how it works. And let me explain it to you. But it's education, 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 and we could do 1,000 times more of it, and it wouldn't be enough. And yeah, it's educated
Yeah,
every
it
opportunity. I try to.
yep. And
Yeah.
kind of digging into one of the points you had there in terms of, or one of the things we've been talking about in terms of what goes on behind the scenes, and that engineering staff that's usually running the buildings, they're normally run pretty lean, right? So, if I would need them to get to do something on the water treatment side, such as change out a blowdown valve or whatever it might be, right? It's usually second hat to something else that's going on. So, one of the things I love about my work here is really partnering with that engineer or building maintenance manager, and really seeing the change and the improvements that we have across the board. So if I'm asking them to change, or over time, so if I'm asking them to change out the filters once a week when we start out, and they're like, okay, I guess I'll do this, right? But then the water, like after 3 weeks of this, the water starts to clear up, and they're not having black water that's coming out of the molds when they change molds, and their cycle times are becoming more consistent. The part quality is becoming more consistent within manufacturing, or even with HVAC. If the water is clearing up and they're not having to clean those filters as often, they just seeing that improvement and really taking some of this stuff off of their plate, that they can actually use us as a partner versus just a vendor that's coming in. That is my greatest joy in this business right here, is really providing that help and that support, where they typically are, I think, taken advantage of in terms of the sales cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you ever been to the boiler room in O'Hare Airport?
I have not actually, and I've the tram from the parking goes by it. It goes by the plant, so I've not been in it. I think Brian has, but not me at this point yet.
Yeah, every time I go to the airport, I see it, and I'm like, man, I see it. It looks cool. They got sweet glass. The boilers are right
Yes,
up against the glass. And I'm like, the thousands and millions of people that take this, they look out and they're like, oh, what's all that machinery out there, and all that stuff. Or that's weird. Yeah, it's probably airports are weird to get into, but that is on my list. I'm like, man, that looks like a cool room. I want to get in there. But yeah, that's a good example of boilers being visible and not hidden and tucked away. And they used a glass wall. I believe they're decent sized water tube boilers, but they used a glass wall instead of a concrete wall. And it's now more of a showroom of boilers for the tram, that you can see it going between terminals or whatever it is. And instead of this building hidden away in the far, far corner of the lot, underground, and all people see are the stacks, and maybe, the cloud coming out of the stacks, and they think, oh, what are we polluting today? And you got to make that connection that, hey, we're burning natural gas as clean as possible so that we can heat, in this case, the airport. And then even heat, I'm sure they have snow melt and, heating the ground, and, and it's all to keep the infrastructure and people moving and keep people comfortable. And yeah, that's big. That's something I think about every time I go to O'Hare. And Chicago is cool. I've been there a bunch of times, especially with AHR coming through. Do you go to AHR?
To what?
AHR conference? Do
I
you
have
know?
not been to that one yet. No.
Oh, all right. All right. Well, it's probably the biggest HVAC conference. It's in Las Vegas, end of January, I believe, this year. I know it's in Las Vegas. It's end of January sometime, early February, but it rolls through Chicago um, once every 4 years, I believe. But going back to training, education, and getting people into the industry, what are you interested in? What are your hobbies? What makes a good water treater? If I am a chemical engineer sitting in college, or if I am a building engineer or even a service technician and saying, hey, I want to get into water treatment, that sounds cool. Like, what qualities should I have? What should I find interesting, at least from your point of view? And getting into the industry is basically like, you just got to get hired with a company. But um, yeah,
Yeah.
just trying to find out more of the profiles of who a water treater is and who would find it interesting.
So a lot of times, there's in water treatment, you do have to have a little bit of a sales mindset to you as well, right? So you're the salesman, you're the technician, you're the account manager, and kind of you're running your own little business in a lot of companies. Now, other companies have certainly gone to a technician and salesman type setup that's becoming more and more common because of just like scale and money and things like that, right? But if you to be successful at water treatment, though, I think you need to have a really good troubleshooting mindset, just a good process oriented mindset around knowing the basics around mechanics in any sort of mechanical room, right? So you might not, even if you're not an expert within what the chemistry does in the system, you can still start to learn that so long as you've got a really good understanding as to here's how the things interact within the room. And then you start to add on, here's what the chemistry does to the system in order to keep it safe. So I think all of that really starts to add the value that we can bring to the customer in terms of interpreting the data that we're getting and not just saying chemistry is low here or there, but here's probably what's going on in your system today. And here's what you should be looking out for. So, so I think all of that will, certainly being a good troubleshooter, good, like to interact with people, and then just having the ability to work through a process. I think all really uh, make this a good career choice if that's something that you want to get into. Now, you don't even have to start in a technical field in order to get into this. So if you already are in a technical field and you want to get into this, certainly I think you've got a good head start there. Now I started out technical. I think so Brian, he's got a degree in economics, right? That's doesn't exactly say HVAC or water chemistry with it, but he has certainly been able to learn along the way and get educated in it, and he is extremely familiar with it. So I think you're one of your first guests on the show in the boiler industry. He definitely did not have a boiler related degree either. So there is plenty of examples of that, even if you don't have a technical degree starting out. And so at the end of the day, good process thinking, well oriented, like dealing with people, and just like to help people as well.
Were you good at math in high school? Are you a math person?
I was more on the math side than on the English and reading and that comprehension side. So for sure.
Yeah. So the math side, always has an answer. And that's one part of the brain or one part of thinking. And there are people that love defined answers. And then the art English side of school is more of it's a spectrum, and there's no defined answer. And water treatment is a very black and white. While there is like a spectrum, there's a very black and white industry of, this is chemistry, this is the process. If we do this, then we will get this. And, I'm trying to learn about, humans and what makes a good human for a good job. And there's all kinds of personality tests out there. And I'm just trying to figure it out. Because, the qualities you listed are, that's what makes a good HVAC service
Totally.
technician. But companies are struggling to find people like that. But I also think, one, it's advertising. Like, we have done a poor job as a industry for the last 30 years because we've always been, oh, we have plenty of work. We just get work from word of mouth. Well, advertising actually isn't for more work. It's for people to come work for your company. I've talked to so many people, and they're like, I just say, what is a boiler? They have no idea what a boiler is. And, this is in the Northeast as well, where, boilers are in almost every building. And, what's HVAC? Oh, is that my furnace? Oh, okay. Like, and, people, you drive down an uh, industrial park, and there's all these buildings with companies, and nobody knows what the companies do. You'd have to look them up online, but they're no-name companies. Nobody ever heard of them. They're all the small businesses. And that's most HVAC, most water treaters are these just smaller businesses that nobody's ever heard of. And we have to advertise and educate 100 times X of what we're doing now to even kind of solve this labor problem of, people not coming into the industry for whatever reason. There's more issues than the, people not knowing about it. But with AI and how the workforce is changing, there may be more college grads that could get into water treatment, HVAC, whatever, right off the bat. But it's easier if they know about it instead of 2 years after graduation, they're just shopping around. And I've heard of people with degrees, like engineering degrees, working for, maybe working in service, but not working in a field because they can't get a job because they don't have any experience. But you can't get experience if you don't have the job. And it's this like back and forth. There's all kinds of issues, but I don't know, it's a internship. If you are in college, an internship is huge because the company only makes a 3-month commitment to you. But in those 3 months, you can learn a lot about yourself and learn about what you want to do or what you don't want to do. And if you take a water treatment internship and follow somebody around and you're like, that was the worst 3 months of my life. Well, don't look at it as a waste, but it's now hey, I know I don't want to do that. But if you do that and you're like, that was amazing, I want to do that. Now you have a career path and also an into a company after college. Unless you have any thoughts on that. I think we blabbered enough today, maybe.
Yeah, no, I think the internship is, I do think the internship is pretty critical, especially nowadays, and they get really competitive now too. So the previous big company I worked for, large company, we had 100 interns basically every single summer throughout the organization. I usually took on like one or two engineers or so, and um, I'd hire some of them and others not, right? So I worked in I had a manufacturing site. So if they, to your point here, if they liked it, and they wanted to continue down it, great. But it also a lot of times had to do with the projects and the person that they were, that they were working for and so on and so forth, not just the job itself, right? Because the job itself you can make almost anything good. But am I working with the right partners? So internship critical. I think it's a good thing and great for the career and great for the company to try out somebody as well.
Yes. Yeah. To wrap this up, don't be don't be afraid to try something new. You can always restart and try another thing new. I think a lot of people, they're afraid to jump into a job or jump into a career. They're like, well, I don't know if I'm going to like it. Well, the only way you're going to figure out if you're going to like it is jumping in. And that's jumping in with 2 feet. That's not, oh, a little of this, or, oh, I want to be an HVAC tech, but I really want to do this. So I'm just going to try to moonlight for HVAC technician. Well, if you're not dedicated, and it doesn't have to consume your life, but if you do a job and you're not passionate about it and you really want to do something else, go do whatever else you want to do. You will you'll be an awful service technician for HVAC if you have zero care. It's not water treatment, HVAC. It's not a job where you can just show up, punch the clock, show up on a Friday hungover, and just kind of hide in a desk. That's not the job. And you will hate your life, and your employer will probably hate you and fire you. Life is too short. Go do what you want to do. But if you see an opportunity, take it. I think a lot of people, and I kind of see this, I'm still young these days, but it's so easy to think that you have to have your life figured out right after college, or, if you don't have a house and 2 kids and a wife by 25, and, you're in the career that, you've always dreamed about, or a lot of young people struggle with, like, oh, I'm not passionate about anything. But sitting around at home is not going to be able to find your passion. And, and the other side of that is, if you have a hobby and that hobby doesn't make money or whatnot, trying to do what you love is great in theory, but sometimes, there's plenty of people that get into auto mechanics because they love working on cars, but most auto mechanics hate working on cars about 2 or 3 years in, because it becomes a job. And yeah, I see so many young people just afraid to jump 2 feet first into an industry that they don't know about, or afraid to make a wrong decision. It's a career. There's no right decision for you. There's no right decision for everybody. Even with online, people are constantly asking for advice. Hey, I have this, I have this, I have this. What's your advice for my life? Only you know. But as long as you're operating within like the moral constructs of society, there's no right way to live your life. And if you're young, go for it. You got plenty of time. Even if you're older, if you're 40s, 45, it's never too late to get into a new career. There is so much opportunity in water treatment. There's so much opportunity in HVAC, so much opportunity in boilers, all this, even manufacturing, where, you constantly hear about it, offshoring and everything. There's tons of manufacturing in the United States. And yeah, that's my end rant. I want to, you could close with
I can give a quick so just to reinforce your statement there, right, is my career path. So Eric, I know you've given your age out on this podcast multiple times. So I am 42 and have just started a partnership with my own company. So I'm not young anymore, right? Of course, some that are listening will say, you still got your whole life ahead of you. Well, I got like half my working life. I don't know. But my career path wasn't linear, and I jumped into a number of different things. I've worked for mostly one company my entire career, but I did a number of things with it. So for 15 plus years, I worked in manufacturing as a process engineer. I worked in supply chains for it. I worked as a leader of a factory. I actually switched positions, and I worked in product development, and then I worked in sustainability before coming here. Now, what this particular role gives me that I really like is, one, a true partnership. So I don't have a manager that says they like to be a partner, but has to manage you at the end of the day, right? So I've got a true partner. I get to decide what I'm doing. Every second I work is for us. It's not I'm working for wages, or working for a 0.5% increase in GM for somebody else. So that's a lot of meaning to me, and I think those that are thinking about starting your own company or going into something like this, that's a big driving force behind me, and I get to decide to do a good job and not worry about some sort of factor or some sort of report that's saying I'm being efficient or not at a particular spot or spending too many hours at a spot that may or may not be as profitable. No, I get to do a good job no matter what. So that's the driving force behind what I do. And I think a lot of others can find some really good in that as well if you're thinking about starting your own company.
Awesome. How do people find you?
So ChicagoWT .com. And then can email me, jburgess at chicagowt.com. And we've got all contact information there. So we respond super quick and would love to hear from anybody. Whether it's just chatting about water treatment, think you got a problem, or you want an analysis, happy to do any and all the above.
What's your name and the company?
So Chicago Water Treaters, and it's a little bit of a throwback to Kewanee boilers, because a lot of companies back in the day just said what town they're from and what they did. So that's the route we chose here.
Awesome. Yeah. Are you on LinkedIn? You active?
So I'm on LinkedIn. I would say I am moderately active, so I definitely make posts. I try to do at least a couple a month based on what I'm doing. I'm pretty dry. I'm not going to lie on it. Like, hey, here's an installation I did, or here's a problem I had. So nothing too exciting, but I do like posting and I do like interacting here and there.
I just say that because I love LinkedIn, but it's not. A lot of people think LinkedIn is to get a job, but there could be a water treatment person in South Carolina or in New York City that hears this podcast and goes, man, I've lived that, or man, I thought I was the only one. You are not the only one. We basically have the same experiences across the entire United States. And LinkedIn, it's so easy to DM somebody, as long as you're genuine and not just, hey, buy my thing. DM somebody, hey, I listened to this. I saw your service, whatever. And, even I've jumped on a phone call with people for, 10, 30 minutes or whatever. And they're like, oh, like I thought I was the only one saying this. I saw your post and whatever, but there's other people out there, and it's building that network, and it's building those relationships of, people and expertise, so that maybe, if you are that one water treater and you start a company and, you don't have somebody expert to call your network, call for help. There are other water treaters in the company in the United States that would be more than happy to help you for free, to pick up the phone and say, yeah, this is, I'm 60 or whatever, and in my 40 years of experience, this, I saw that problem, and, this is how we handled it. And that's where the phrase, your network is your net worth. But I think a lot of people are too afraid to reach out, or they're, oh, we don't do business, or I don't live in Chicago and whatnot. You never know. I mean, I don't need water treatment services in Chicago yet. I found this conversation wildly interesting, and I always love it because you've lived experiences that I've lived, and there's other people that are going to listen to this podcast that have lived the same experiences.